Welcome, Victoria. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Long time coming.
Thank you, Connie. You know what? It comes through so loud for me. It's in perfect timing. I think somebody out there is manifesting this episode at a perfect time for them. So you're
Yes,
welcome.
yes. And I want to point out again for those people who see us on video, we both are wearing the same color without even knowing it, right? So this is really funny. So lots of coincidence. So tell our audience, where in the world are you? And then tell them also something that has nothing to do with the conversation we're having afterwards, something surprising maybe or quirky about you or something like that.
Oh, what a great question. So right now I'm in Virginia, which is the United States, where my home and my office are. And a cool fun fact is that I'm completely jet lagged because I arrived from Denmark yesterday, where I went to Denmark and Sweden, for just a few days with my mom. I love to travel, and
Mhm.
Sweden was my 47th country. So there you go.
Wow, 47. That's awesome.
Mhm.
I love it. I haven't been to Denmark yet, but you may remember I'm originally from Europe, so I have been to a lot of European countries. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's awesome. So
Best
we
bread,
want to
best bread,
say again, the best bread?
the,
No, no,
the
that's
best
Switzerland.
bread. I've been to Switzerland 3 times. Jokes aside, I've never had bread like that, and I'm a bread person.
Uh-huh,
They have this rye bread
uh-huh.
that is amazing. It has a whole grain. Anyway, let's refocus.
No, no, no. It's interesting to hear. I love bread, and that's one of my pet peeves a bit here in Canada, although it started to change. But in the beginning, when I came here, they only had here in North America this floppy toast bread without anything around. It's like, okay, this is not bread, people.
Mm,
What are we
mm-mm,
eating here? And it
mm-mm.
has become better. And I also bake my own bread, so that helps too.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, so you can talk about bread all day long here.
One of my amazing team members bakes her own bread, and it's amazing too. So there is a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, it actually is very, very simple to bake bread. I mean, we just kind of think it is very complicated, but it's very, very easy. So, yeah. But what is not so easy is writing a book. And you wrote a really amazing book. I read it, and I think twice already, which is called Prosper Me, the 35 Universal Laws to Make Money for You. And I was just wondering, so writing a book is, is not a small task. So where did this come from? Did you always know you wanted to write a book, and did you know what you wanted to write the book about always?
The book is actually one of my 9 books. So it's some of them are collaboration where I did the chapter, and some of them are solo books. And both of my parents are journalists. And
Oh,
my brother is a fiction writer, and
okay.
I think he's written over 20 for sure, but I'm not sure how many.
Uh-huh.
And we have very different styles. My joke is that he is a writer and I'm an author, and they're two very different things
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
he cannot breathe without writing. It's
Yes.
it's like it's like second nature and second air to him, and he's just phenomenally talented, and he writes in all of these different genres, and for me, I author the ideas that come through me,
Hmm.
and I speak those ideas into existence. And so I am more of a speaker and an author who writes things down versus a writer,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
And for this particular book, it actually has had a very interesting journey because Prosper Me was first born inside my Quantum Freedom subscription group as I
Hmm.
was channeling the prosperity laws. And I did, them in 7 programs, groups of 5. But even I should take a step back before then. So we have an app. One of our apps is called Empower Me. And I thought it was a great idea to put the laws with affirmations into the app. So a person grab a phone, they shake a phone, and intuitively the law they need to affirm would pop up on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And so my incredible co-creator, has come up with doing that. And that's how that little app was born. Well, my client said, app is great, but we need more. So
Mm-hmm.
then I recorded the video programs. And then as a result of those recorded video programs, the book literally was an afterthought, that was a result of this whole process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I want to touch also on something that you probably get asked in every single interview, but my audience may not have heard it because you spell me differently than we would think. You spell the M lowercase
Yeah.
and the E higher case uppercase. And so I was wondering whether you would share with my audience why, because I thought that was so beautiful.
Thank you. The story is actually very poignant for me for two reasons. Because the main message I think that I try to convey through the book and through everything else is that all of us, without an exception, have full access to divine guidance. All
Mm-hmm.
of us,
Mm-hmm.
without an exception. And so it was, in March 2019, I believe it was March 2019, where I had a very busy month. Like I had classes, appointments, just very busy months. And that divine knowing, God, spirit, whatever language you use, I call it spirit, that prompted me. And I had a feeling you need to cancel everything. So was, let's put it this way, I've ignored it enough times
Yeah.
to not to ignore it anymore and not ask a question why. So I've canceled everything. And I thought, maybe, and you and I had this little conversation, I thought maybe it's for me to learn to not have the next thing to be. I need to be present. And it was fascinating because within a couple of hours, I had this stronger prompting that said, you need to write a book. And so a very different book was being written through me.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was writing this book, I found a publisher, and the publisher said, the book is a bestseller. The title is horrible. Change the title. Well, when I pondered on the new title for the book, the whole new book came in. And,
Ah.
and I was given this, title. And I thought, oh, how interesting, how beautiful. I saw this little M begin in my mind, and I thought, this is amazing. This is going to be pattern interrupt. Somebody comes into the store to buy a book, and instead of asking why me, poor me, they say, why me? It's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And that was my interpretation. And it literally took me a couple weeks before I said, wait a minute. It was a divine knowing that named the book. Maybe I asked the reason why. And when the meaning was given, and I received the meaning, it was very humbling because what I was shown is that all of my work has been around the concept of me, as each one of us, as a combination of our little m, little scared m of mortality, of matter,
Yeah.
of material manifesting. All of us have that little scared me of material matter.
Mm-hmm.
And yet all of us have this beautiful, eternal energy of the essence that expands.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it the sacred me. And so every day, this journey of life for me is surrendering my little m to my big E.
Yeah.
So the name of the book is a reminder of how to surrender your scared mortal to eternal, matter to energy, manifesting to expanding, and material to essential. And so the book then is a guide of 35 universal laws of powerful surrender into abundance.
Yeah. And I have goosebumps, and I had goosebumps when I read it the first time. Because I think when whoever listens to this, and also with your beautiful voice, how you explain it, we know intuitively it's true. And that's exactly it. And still, and I'm on this path for a while, and still it's so hard. We just talked about it with my accident.
Every
I
day.
was obviously not listening, and so I had to have a stronger message, but we know it so much, know that we're guided, and we're not, like you said, you listened back then in 2019 and you canceled everything. I obviously wasn't listening, so I had to cancel. I was forced. So this
You know,
this
I wanted to say something, Connie, that sometimes, and think it's important for somebody to hear. Sometimes what we think is a disease actually is a healing. You know, my very close friend, I have a permission to share her name and her story. Her name is Glenna Spencer. She's a retired military captain and commander. She's retired military Navy commander who I met when I was doing real estate. She was a realtor, and then she got into all of the energy, healing modalities that I was teaching on. And on September 11th, when the planes when the planes attacked, hit the Twin Towers and Pentagon, and that horrific time, she was scheduled to be speaking in the wing of the Pentagon that was hit that morning.
Mm-hmm.
She woke up with 103-degree fever and, symptoms that she could not get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she's a retired commander. She's one of those women that it's like, where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often think that we're so quick to misinterpret the cause and the effect.
Yeah.
And sometimes when something happens to our body, it's our divine intelligence fastest way to communicate to us.
To protect us, probably. In her case, I think I saw a documentary or something I saw about her. I recall now, may have been in a documentary about 9/11 that I saw, that she couldn't get out of bed and she couldn't go. And she's kind of like, I showed up everywhere, all my career, every time. And this was the only time I couldn't. And thank God I couldn't. Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting.
And so, I just think whatever happens is to take it at a face value and say, if there is a better way for me to learn, so be it. But if this is the best, I'm so grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think I do truly believe in the end, everything is for our best. We may just not understand it yet. And I have this inquiring mind that would like to understand, but I'm also coming to grips with the fact that maybe I'm not always understanding. Like maybe I just sometimes have to just accept that it was for the best for whatever reason. But we do have some agency in a way. I feel like when I'm reading about, for example, your law of intention in your book. So I'm somebody who's big on intentions, but when I read your book, I'm like, oh, I have some room of improvement. So I do new moon intentions. I also set specific intentions for every podcast episode, or like for the, let's say, bigger things. But you, for example, say that before we start any task, we should ask ourselves, what is our intention? And we also should intend always the most profitable outcome for anybody involved. So I was thinking like, yeah, I have some room for improvement. But what I was wondering is, like, in a very practical way, how are you doing this? Do you have some ritual around it? Do you take 3 deep breaths before you do anything, or any other practical application that we can bring it down to earth?
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to give a very beautiful map of intentional living with just 3 questions in a minute. But before I do that, I wanted to say that there is, usually in common consciousness in our everyday life, there's a confusion between what the law of intention is for. We think it is to intend an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
When we don't get the intended outcome, we feel either we're not manifesting or the law is broken. But the law of intention is there for us to live a fulfilled life of intention, nothing more, nothing less, detached from outcome. And so what I love to do, and what all of my coaches, our whole team, this is pretty much our team meeting. We set an intention for the year. So our mind cannot resist answering a question. It simply cannot. I mean, I will demonstrate it to you, right? I'm going to say, what kind of dairy or non-dairy products do you have in your refrigerator? You cannot not start thinking about what kind of dairy or non-dairy products you have in your refrigerator. Now you're like, stop it.
Yeah.
So the questions we ask are always, always, always answered by our subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're answered by our subconscious, our reticular activating system, the filter that filters our life, tunes in. And then it filters everything out of our life that's not in alignment with the question. As a matter of fact, one of my amazing coaches, Mika, this morning, I'm talking to him and he was wearing red glasses, the mood glasses, and he was driving. He's in Finland. He's driving, and as he's driving, he realizes he can't see the green light at all
Oh.
because the red cancels the green light.
Yeah.
And he says, I've always tried to understand how it filters it out, but the green light is right there, but my glasses, my filter, are not letting me see it. So the mechanism is I ask a question, and that places a filter on my perception of reality. And I'm only going to see what I'm capable of seeing. So understanding that, usually at the beginning of the year, or whenever you hear it for the first time, you're going to close your eyes and you're going to say, okay, how will you address the source of life? God, creator, universe. What is my intention for this year? What is my theme for this year? And allow the first phrase or word come through. That's where you start. And you ask the second question. Okay, whatever months it is now, let's say you're listening to it maybe in October, and you're going to say, okay, what is my intention for October to support my intention for the year? And that answer will come immediately. And then the practicality of intentional everyday living. Now, this question has been truly polished with thousands of sessions, so you can mess it up. It's free agency, or you can use it to benefit. And the question is, every day when you first wake up in the morning, you see you already have the theme for the months. You're going to say, what is one decision I am to make, or one action I am to take today to support my intention for the month in the best and highest, most aligned way. So the intentional living is completely detached from the outcome.
Yes.
It is creating forward. And the amazing thing is at the end of the month, you look at the months full of miracles, and then a year full of miracles. So there you go, the intentional living 3-question system.
Yeah, I love that approach. I will definitely try that out. I did it differently. So I kind of also detach it from the outcome. It was more like, how do I personally want to show up? What is my intention? How do I show up for whatever is in front of me? Kind of like that's how I approach it. But I love what you just shared with us. I definitely will try that out. That's beautiful. Yeah, so that was one of the laws you talk in your book, like the law of intention. You also talk about the law of abundance, and I thought it was so interesting in there how you talked about the difference between abundance and prosperity. And I'm thinking that's also something that people mix up a lot. Maybe you could share with us too what actually is the difference, because I think people just mix it and say basically make no distinction between it.
Abundance is a principle of life. Life expands through everything. So when you go into the garden, it doesn't matter whether you plant the seeds or the weeds will grow. Life is abundant. It is wildly abundant. And so a lot of us want abundance, not realizing that abundance is. And so if you have abundance of worry, you have abundance of worry. If you have abundance of fear, you have abundance of fear. Whatever your main focus is, it becomes abundant in your life. So prosperity is an intentional abundance for positive, for love, for purpose. And so it's like pruning the garden of your existence because it already is abundant. And when you look at your life and you go like, oh yeah, I have plenty of problems. It's because abundance is the law. It just is. But prosperity says, how can I have abundance for me? Not abundance for all in all ways, but how can prosperity express through me?
Yeah.
Am I deserving of that prosperity?
Yeah. And I love that so much. That brought so much clarity to me. Because like you said, abundance is everywhere. And you just said it perfectly, and which leads to my next questions, because you also talk about the law of space. And like on my podcast, I talk a lot about how people are surrounded by clutter or just too much stuff. And I feel like they're just having the abundance in the wrong in the wrong place, right? I mean, it's like, and especially those people who think they need to cling on to everything, they're having their focus on the wrong abundance. And I mean, wrong with, like, we shouldn't be judging, but it's kind of like they want to have
Abundance of lack.
abundance, and they have the abundance, but don't realize that they have the abundance in all this stuff that they're clinging on to, right?
I love that abundance of chaos, right?
Yeah.
Instead of abundance of peace.
Yeah.
I mean, back to your beautiful podcast. And in the book, actually, the story I'm sharing is so poignant because I was launching a new program of a very high frequency energetically. And once again, you're so beautifully in tune because we just talked about I'm a person who loves my clothes. I buy high quality clothes, but then I keep it forever. I'm 48 at the time of recording this podcast, and I have a dress that was sewn for me when I was 18. I will never part with that dress. I love the dress. I don't always fit into it. Most of the times I do. But it's the dress. I love it. So I had so much clothes in my closet. It was so much clothes in my closet. And I had this small prompting, how I said, because I haven't listened so many times, that's one of those times. I had a prompting inside. You gotta donate a lot of your closet. You're not wearing, just go through the closet. And as most of us do, I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do
Exactly.
it. Yeah, yeah, I'll get to it.
Not now. I have no
So
time.
yeah, exactly. So, well, I was helped because what happened is that I went to, a week before I had to teach the program. I taught one of the other seminars and I came home. I walked into my closet and the heaviness of the clothes pulled down the racks down to the studs. I had drywall on the floor. I literally had half of the wall that has collapsed on me completely. And the irony was in this new program, I was teaching on the law of space. And I
Yeah.
just stood there. I said, the only thing I could do is laugh because, and it was a beautiful reminder. And what came out of it was beautiful because I've had a closet that I always wanted built for me and is beautifully organized now. There's a lot of space, but we've got to make space for order because when there is space for order, there is space for abundance because abundance as prosperity likes order.
Yeah.
Abundance as peace likes order. Abundance as chaos likes just that, chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually wanted to ask you whether you would be willing to share this story on the podcast, because when I read it in the book, I thought this is perfect because one of my very much downloaded episodes is I have so many clothes, I have nothing to wear. It's kind of like, because that's kind of what happens. And I had to laugh so much. And it's so funny. It happens to all of us, these things. That we're
Mhm.
accumulating too much, and then something funny happens. And so thank you so much for sharing. Another topic that we're talking a lot on my podcast is about money and finances. And one of the laws I thought was so interesting too. You said the law of spending, and then you said too that as we observe our spending, we will start adjusting our habits. And it's backed by science. I'm a little bit of a science nerd too, so this is really interesting. Like things that are observed are gonna change, which is mind-boggling on its own. But we can use it to our advantage. So a lot of people who have a lot of clutter also have maybe bad spending habits. And I thought it was really awesome to maybe share that. When I saw this law of spending in your book, I'm like, oh, this is
Yeah.
awesome how you look at this.
I know that traditionally we divide time, energy, and money as three resources that we have.
Mm-hmm.
But working with energy, what I've come to understand is there is only one resource, and it is energy. And how we channel it, how we work with it,
Mm-hmm.
will be reflected in our relationship with time and with money.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's
Exactly.
it's all one pattern. It is
Yeah.
all one pattern. And so if we learn to observe without judgment, we
Mm-hmm.
can see patterns of behavior that we can lead ourselves out of. And so you can spend energy, you can spend time, and you can spend money. If you don't watch how you do it, you will never have enough of it.
Mm-hmm.
The second you start observing, you create it. It's really incredible. When you start observing how you spend your time, you're actually making more time. Time observed is multiplied.
Yeah.
When you start paying attention to your energy, what drains me, what empowers me. You know,
Mm-hmm.
John Assaraf says, do more of what you love, less of what you tolerate, and none of what you hate. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the energy preservation law. But so with spending money, a lot of people start with creating budget, but it's an artificial budget because they don't know who they are. They haven't watched their spending. So
Mm-hmm.
they set themselves up for failure.
Yeah.
So I recommend for 3 months, don't make it difficult. Don't buy an expensive app or create a spreadsheet that'll take you 5 months. Grab a phone, and every time you buy something, you spend money on your phone in notes section, put what it's for and how much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, the first time I did it, it was shocking to
Mm-hmm.
see how much we spend on mineral water and generally drinks, carbonated drinks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a car payment.
Yeah.
It's a car payment.
Yeah.
And you can decide, once you know your
Mm-hmm.
habits, you can decide which ones work for you and which ones work against you.
Yeah.
And then you can budget to support your, prosperity.
Yeah, I find this is so very well explained from a different angle than what I'm always saying. Like, if you make a budget, this is actually not about restricting you, it's about empowering you. It's about being intentional and actually making the decisions that are in your favor and not like out of ignorance or just like out of the moment spending, which we can have. Maybe we can have a fund that we can just play, have fun with, right? But in general, like you said, sometimes surprising. So I'm a nerd. I write down everything that I'm spending for the last 35 years, I think, or something. So people think I'm nuts. But I always say, like, well, the results speak for themselves. So that's why.
This is so empowering because there's a misunderstanding of the concept of flow. Prosperity is flow, right? It's a
Mhm.
flow. But okay, what is a flow in nature? Because I love comparing money to water. They have so much in common, right? Cash flow, we keep it
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
banks,
Yeah. Yeah.
But the amazing thing about flow is that a river without banks, without boundaries, is a puddle. That's all
Hmm.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the banks without water is a canyon. So
Mm.
what creates a healthy flow is a combination of the boundaries and
Yes.
something that flows through those boundaries.
Yeah.
So without creating boundaries of a healthy budget, you are in a puddle. You are in the puddle and you cut the flow of abundance.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to explain
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Very beautiful. And which leads me into the next. So I made all these connections to. So this leads me to the next law, and this is the law of trading value. And I feel like if we're not paying attention to our spending, we may not trade our hard-earned money really for value, right? And so this is kind of like, because we may just buy something just because the neighbor has it, or we buy it for whatever, or we buy something low quality. And I really like how you say, you encourage us to trade our money for the best value, buying value that serves us in the best and highest way over a period of time. And I feel like that is sometimes what people are missing when they're hanging on to clutter. It's not something of value to them, and they're still clinging on to them. And also when they're buying things, they're not buying the things of the highest value. They're buying because they're not intentional about it. I'm running in cycles with your beautiful laws. It's like,
Yeah, and I think, and this can be an emotional observation for most of us, but the more we devalue who we are, the more less valuable things we'll buy because we want to restore that value.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So we misappropriate the healing of value that we are to constantly buying things. They don't call it shopping therapy for nothing.
yeah,
We're trying to prove to ourselves that we're deserving of something new, that we're deserving. And yet we stop halfway. we really are deserving of getting the highest value.
Yes.
And so, and that of course requires maybe saving up to buy something that will last a long time. And by no means keeping up with the Joneses, which I think all the social media makes it very hard for so many people. You know, they keep looking at what people are doing. None of us know the rest of the story. We
Yes.
see the facade. There is the rest of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I always say that like clutter covers up what our emotional, like the needs we would have emotionally, and we're
Yeah.
not addressing those emotional needs. We're cover them up with stuff that may make us feel good for, I don't know, a few minutes maybe. Like when I help people, sometimes I find in their home bags full of stuff they bought. They bought it, they had the high when they gave the money, which is so interesting. And then they came home and they're already not interested anymore. The bag unpacked is sitting somewhere in their closet or in their hallway. They don't even take it out. So we know already they're not valuing themselves. They're not valuing what they bought. We can even go further. They like all this stuff, this low value stuff that gets sold in stores is not valuing the people who produce it, who put valuable time into it. I mean, we could go in circles. It's and like you said, social media doesn't make it better at all. Yeah.
You know, and I think the anticipation is in most relationships, I think most relationships fall apart is because not knowing how to value ourselves, we expect our partner to value us.
Mm-hmm.
And our partner cannot long term value us more than we can value ourselves.
Yeah.
And so there's just an immense, you know, I look at money as two things. It's a magnifier of who we are. Relationship with money is a magnifier of who we are. Money doesn't change us, it just truly shows us who we are. And it strips us of filters. That's what money does. It's the energy that strips filters out, and you can see more of who a person is. And it is a token of freedom. Now, money is a token of freedom. It is much easier. You know, I was joking in the beginning. I just came home and I'm jet lagged, and it was not a business trip. I just took my mom for 3 days to Denmark for no reason, just to be with my mom in Denmark. And yes, I could spend 3 days with my mom in the garden and the quality relationship would probably be the same. But the energetically, when you go to a different place, subconsciously you absorb and you learn things
Mm-hmm.
that your brain can't keep up with.
Mm-hmm.
You're just absorbing everything, you know? And so, and I couldn't have done it if it wasn't for the token of freedom of movement that was there accessible to me, which is why I'm so passionate about opening that prosperity for anybody who says, I'm done. I want to be free and I deserve to be free. And because I value myself, I'm going to value money in a way that supports my values.
Yeah. That reminds me also of your other law, the law of harvest, where you say, notice what you notice. Because when we're focusing on what we want, when we're noticing, then we create the possibility, and then we're paying attention to the spending, the law of spending, and then we're going in the direction where we want to go. And this is where we have agency in our own life, despite the fact that in the end we have to surrender to the divine, right? But it's still, like you said, we're going somewhere. We're using the money for good, and we're how can I say this? It's almost like an extension of all that we talked about already. How are we
Yeah.
using the money for the highest value? What is the highest value? It is to have a beautiful experience with your mother, for example, in Denmark. You know, this is the highest value that pays so many dividends, not monetary, but in other ways afterwards.
Yeah, it is nothing but a token of freedom. That's the way I look at it. If it becomes more than that, then it enslaves you, right?
Mm,
And but it doesn't do it on its own. It's just energy.
yeah.
It means there's something in you that needs to be healed.
Hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful. You have so, I mean, I could speak with you forever. 35 laws. I picked out eight. We haven't even talked about eight yet. One other one that I want to talk about that I feel like, especially as women, we sometimes have trouble doing it is the law of receiving. Because
Mm,
our automatic response is often no. And this might be a little bit abrupt of a topic change, but in the end, I not, because to me, everything is connected. But so this is one thing that I had to learn a bit, not the hard way, but I was literally forced to learn lately since I had the accident to accept help, because I'm also somebody who is quick to say no. And so you're saying that we're cutting ourselves off from receiving, and we're struggling asking and receiving help, asking for and receiving help. And I was wondering, what is your take on it? I mean, I kind of know, but share with our audience, what is your
yeah,
take on it? Because especially as women, I always feel like we're give, 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 and then it's all in the imbalance, right? It's not balanced in the end.
from a very unexpected turn, giving is very fulfilling. We all know it. We don't give because it makes us feel bad. We give because it makes us feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And because in giving, we are living the law of prosperity. It means I have something to give. It's a beautiful mechanism. But receiving is not opposite of giving. It is one and the same. Because when you receive, you give somebody the greatest gift you can give, which is opportunity to give.
Mm-hmm.
Receiving is the ultimate giving. And something that comes to mind that is very tender to my heart. I had this conversation with a dear friend of mine, and because without realizing it, I've had an ability to receive genuine thank you. I would do a session or I'd speak and people would say thank you, and I'd say, yeah, 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 yeah. But energetically, I was blocking it from receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend told me, she said, somebody said to me, thank you is all I have to give you.
Mm-hmm.
Will you please receive it?
Yeah.
Because I don't have anything more to give.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, it was probably the most poignant moment for me to know how to receive a thank you,
Mm-hmm.
like to stand in that energy and receive into my heart when somebody says thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Because for some of us, that is all we can give at that moment. And when I'm energetically shutting it off, I am rejecting a person,
Yes.
not purposefully. So when somebody asks me the same principle, can I help you? And I say no, without wanting to, meaning to, I am
Yeah.
rejecting a
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah.
So much healthy answer to say is, let me think about it and get back with you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then really think about it and really allow for somebody to give into your life. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's work in progress for me.
I think it's work in progress for a lot of us because we're like maybe not raised this way, or not like the world isn't that way. What comes to mind when you were talking about not receiving the thank you was also how we often don't receive a compliment, right? And you were speaking earlier about that we all want and hope and sometimes even demand that our spouse or other people value us, but by not accepting a compliment, we're not valuing ourselves, and we're not valuing the other people who gives us something that may be what they have to give. And yeah, it's funny
And we
how,
make it impossible. We make it
yeah,
impossible for the universe, for God to
yeah,
give prosperity to us
yeah,
because we're so trained to say, no, thank you. I
yeah,
got it. Let me put another 90-hour week in.
yeah.
For, I got this. I got this. Listen, this, I think there are levels of empowerment. And there is a point in our life when we feel completely powerless. We feel something happened to us. And when I say in my life, it could be a couple of times a day, a couple of times a year, right? It varies. But there is a moment of powerlessness saying, something happened to me. Okay. The next step to say, it happened to me, it means it also happened for me. How did it happen for me? And this is where I got this comes in. Oh, I got this. It happened for me. I'm
Mhm.
learning. But if you stop there, you remain power hungry. And you become one of those people, overachievers, with 9 degrees on top of the achievement, feeling completely empty
Yeah.
until you say, okay, life doesn't happen to me. It doesn't happen just for me. Life happens through me.
For me.
Life happens through me. And when you understand that, then automatically you receive the flow of life so that you can give it to where it's needed.
Yeah. So beautiful. You have such beautiful ways of explaining these things. One last thought, law I want to touch before we start winding down, and that's the law of gratitude. We couldn't do without the law of gratitude. And I thought it was such a beautiful distinction. You say, be in, so be grateful for all the things instead of making the mistake of being grateful. I can't even say it. See, no, be grateful in all the things instead of for all the things. This was kind of,
Yeah.
see, I can't even properly say it because it was so mind blowing for me.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you brought it up. I genuinely am. I have chosen it because I believe a lot of us are reluctant to lean into gratitude because we've been programmed to force ourselves to be grateful for horrible things.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, we say, oh, I'm grateful for abuse. If you're grateful for abuse,
No, 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 no.
you've got help. So, what is the distinction? You're grateful for lessons you've learned. You're grateful for immense strength that carried you through. You're grateful for help you received. And so you're grateful through hardships, or you're grateful in hardships. Once you make that shift, you no longer force yourself to be grateful for circumstance that is damaging. Because if you force yourself to be grateful for damaging circumstance, you train yourself to repeat it. Gratitude is the process of creation. What we appreciate appreciates, it grows in value. So if I'm grateful for something great in my life, more of it grows in my life. But if I'm forcing myself to be grateful for betrayal, it grows
Yeah,
abundantly.
yeah, yeah.
So that is a huge thing. And another thing with the law of gratitude that I feel is so important, not forcing a list of things to be grateful for, but connecting genuinely to 1 or 2 things at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, I set a buzzer on my phone and I have that as an action step in the book. And every law has an action step. That's for law of gratitude. I've set a buzzer for my phone that goes off. The reminder that pops up at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m. again. And they're sacred numbers. They're 6 hours apart. We can talk about that different time. But it pops up and it says, um, you know, I'm loved. God loves me. What am I grateful for right now?
Mm-hmm.
And when I see the reminder, I'll pause and I'll genuinely seek the moment of gratitude. And the amazing thing has happened. My brain has programmed itself to be seeking what to be grateful for,
Mm-hmm.
to report to my little reminder.
Yes.
And the next level of gratitude, you're no longer grateful for things, you're just grateful. You're
Grateful in
grateful.
general. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So beautiful. So beautiful. So now I want to give you a chance to tell people a little bit about where they can find you, what you offer, and yeah, just brag a
Yeah.
bit because you have such a huge body of work that I don't even know where to point them at. So I let you point them at.
You know, we've just literally probably not quite even a month ago started a brand new Facebook community. The link to that is called freeme.coach. Now we know why me, we know why free. So it's freeme.coach. And what I do in that group is whenever there is an important law, universal law, I love universal laws, I work with universal laws. Whenever there is a law that I feel is being misunderstood in the society or is most misinterpreted, I do a quick live in that group on that law. For example, your podcast has it first, it hasn't been in the group yet. I want to talk about the law of friction. It's not in the book. It's a powerful law of movement. A lot of people are stuck right now, even listening to us, because they're avoiding friction in life.
Mm-hmm.
Without friction, there's no movement. You put a car on ice, it slides, it cannot move.
Mm-hmm.
With too much friction, there is resistance
Mm-hmm.
and you cannot move. So the right amount of friction, which is living from your authenticity while honoring authenticity of others at all times, frees you to move forward. So that would be like a 3-minute live blurb that you would be getting in
Yeah.
the group. And anytime we have a special program or a special offer, the group freeme.coach, I always, plan on offering it there first.
That's beautiful. We can put the link in the show notes. They can just click on it and find it right away and find you, because I feel like this was such a valuable conversation, Victoria. I mean, I could talk with you forever and ever, but we want to be mindful of your time. And but I wanted to ask you, and I ask that every guest, because I feel like, yes, you're on my podcast, but maybe you came with something that you wanted to share, or maybe you intuitively feel there is something that I didn't ask that is missing from this conversation. So this is the time now that I ask, is there anything you want to end with?
I think what comes beautifully through me now is that if there was a better way to fill the space and time that you as a being occupy right now, infinite intelligence would have done so.
Oh, yeah.
And yet it hasn't.
Yeah.
And yet it hasn't. So you are the ultimate creation for the space and time where you're in. And the sooner you understand that, and the sooner you free yourself to know that, the greater this world and Connie and I will be for it.
So beautiful, Victoria. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on my podcast and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.